Yeah, family, y'all. Just keep it tight, keep it tight, keep it tight. All right, yeah, 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 yeah. Here we go, here we go.
Okay, my chapter 19. So Pilate takes and scorns and the soldiers put some thorns as a crown. It said, "Hail the King of the Jews," slapping him and doing whatever. So they take him out. Look, I can see him again. Then they robe him with a purple robe, which symbolizes royalty. And it's also used in funerals, and it's also a symbolism of the coming of Easter. When they saw the priest, they gathered and Pilate was scared of him, really. He kept claiming, "I can find no wrong in him." He kept telling them. But the Jews kept insisting, saying that yes, he claims to be the Son of God. So Pilate was talking to Jesus and told him, "You refuse to talk to me." Jesus replied, and he said, "You know I have the power to crucify you." And Jesus said, "You would not have the power over me if it had not been given to you from above. This is why who handed me over to you has a greater guilt." To me, that was Judas, and all of us that have, all of them people at that time that had sinned were guilty because they were going to put him to death. Pilate was anxious because he wanted to let him go. He wanted to set him free, but the Jews kept insisting, "No, no, you have to crucify him, crucify him." And they kept telling him, "Here's your king," and the Jews kept saying, "He is not our king, Caesar's our king." Pilate also wrote on there, "King of the Jews," and on the cross. And the Jewish people were upset because it was written in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek, and they said, "He is no king of the Jews." Pilate answered, "What I have written, I have written." So, to me, that seems like he was saying he is king of the Jews. You know, he wanted to be exonerated. I did not crucify him. The Jews did. Somebody else did. I didn't do it. Somebody else did it. That's how Pilate was getting away from the blame of Jesus being crucified. The soldiers finished crucifying Jesus. They took his clothing and, played dice and took pieces here and there. But the one garment that wasn't torn, wasn't taken apart, was the undergarment. Now that undergarment is one whole piece, has no seams, and they say that when you would touch that garment, you would be healed. And apparently that garment was given to him in some city because this garment was only worn by wealthy people, according to what I heard. Seeing the song, I see your eyes going kind of. But Jesus was not wealthy, but it was given to him as a gift. It wasn't that he was wealthy. So they said, instead of teaching, let us decide, they did that garment. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother and mother's sister. the wife of Cleopas, and Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene was in several scenes of Jesus, important scenes, the crucifixion and the resurrection. Seeing his mother next to the disciple who loved standing near her, Jesus said, This is your mother. Woman, this is your son. Then the disciple took Mary as his mother. I've been pondering that, the loving disciple. I'm wondering if we are all loving disciples. I come up with that answer. I don't know about you. But that's my point of view. That we are the loving disciples. And we are supposed to honor his mother. After this, Jesus went and he was crucified. He told him, I was thirsty. Now, in the Bible that I have there, they said they offered him some kind of narcotic, but that is not mentioned here in the one Mario wrote for me. But in the Bible that I have, the Holy Catholic Bible says that they offered him a narcotic, but he refused it. Instead, they gave him the wine on bitter wine. It was a day of preparation, and above the bodies remaining on the cross during the Sabbath. The Sabbath is a holy day for the Jews, so they wanted his body taken down and asked Pilate to break the legs. So they broke one of the people, but not Jesus, because when they came to him, he had already expired. So one of the soldiers pierced him, and they say water and blood ran out. Now, in the Bible there, it says that God suffered. His heart was suffering because of our sins. And when the blood and water flowed, it was a puncture near his heart. So they didn't break his legs, so according to Scripture, he was not to have his legs broken, but we were to look for the piercing on the side. This event shows true, knowing that the eyes are true, and giving to all have belief as well, because all happen in fulfillment of the word and the Scriptures. No bone will be broken. So then, after that, Joseph of Arimaeus asked Pilate if he could have the body, and he wanted it kept secret because they were still afraid of the Jews, the disciples. So they took the body, and in one book it says they had 70 pounds of fur and linen. The other one says 100. Now, those disciples must have been very strong men to do all of that and carry his body. And they took the body of Jesus and they bound it in linen and cloth and spices according to the Jewish religion. And they buried it. They put him in the garden. The garden is the tomb in which no one had yet been buried.
Interesting. I always love that story of Pontius Pilate, because Pontius Pilate is in a predicament here. What do you do when you have the leaders of the Jewish people screaming at you for a person's crucifixion, but you don't find any guilt in that person, right? If you kill the man, it will appease the crowd. If you don't kill the man, they're going to continue upset with you. It was a political problem that Pontius Pilate had. Maria suggested that they wrote in Greek and Latin and Hebrew in the inscription above him. Have we ever seen crucifixes that have these four letters, I-N-R-I? INRI. Who's INRI? When she said that it was written in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek, that would be the Latin abbreviation. There is no J in Latin, so Jesus Nazarenus, Jesus of Nazareth, King, Rex of the Jews. Oops, there is no J in Latin. Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. Jesus Nazarenus Rex Eudorum would be with the I-N-R-I above. It's essentially trying to capture that element of the story of the inscription that was in Hebrew and Latin and Greek. I-N-R-I, that's the abbreviation for Latin. No, we typically don't put any abbreviations for the Greek or the Hebrew, but it helps to suggest how it was that Pontius Pilate asked that that be written above Jesus.
How you pronounce it, the last one, Father?
Jesus Nazarenus Rex Eudorum.
Eudorum. Okay,
So you get
the L
200
is
of Jews.
silent now.
Right.
The L is silent, Eudorum.
Now this is an I. This is an I. Yeah, capital I. Yeah, capital I. So in Latin we don't have a J, so this is a capital I. So Jesus Eudorum. Various interpretations and speculation. That's the only reason that I raised my eyebrow when we were talking about Jesus' undergarments, only because what happens is we tend to look at stories like this and we tend to try to interpret them, and everyone who's reading those stories is going to look at them through different lenses. So that one person, for instance, might see that and say, ooh, they didn't divide his undergarments, or whatever it comes to. Well, why does the Bible say this? And so people are always speculating about what various passages mean. The whole mother-son image is set up there between the beloved disciple. So Maria very well pointed to how it is that all of us then can see ourselves as the beloved disciple, essentially being in that relationship with Jesus' mother. Here is your mother, here is your child. The legs were broken of the criminals. Why were the legs broken? Do we all understand what crucifixion was? How did you die of crucifixion? Because you lost blood? No. Asphyxiation, which simply means what? Which means that you couldn't breathe anymore. If you were to tie a person to a high place, what happens is in order to breathe, our chest draws in air, but with your arms up like that, there's no way for you after a while to be able to take in air. So it was really a way to torture a person by having them hang on the cross like that. And if they didn't die soon enough, I mean after a few hours they're still not dead, then you'd simply break their legs so that there's nothing holding them up. So long as they had the legs, even though the nail is through the feet, as long as they had their legs, they could push themselves up to be able to breathe. Once you broke the legs then there would be no way of being able to lift themselves up to be able to breathe, and they would die of asphyxiation eventually. Yikes. The water flowing from the side? The question is the Bible a book of history or a book of theology? Did water really come out of his side? If so, what would it be? I mean, people have suggested maybe it's the pericardial sac around the heart, which contains some fluid. But is that something that people are going to notice? I mean, it's all speculation. We've got to believe that if the Bible is a book of theology rather than history, then what it's talking about is those life-giving waters. Remember Jesus talking about that with the Samaritan woman? I will give you life-giving water. When they pierced his heart, what came out? Not just blood, but water. Life-giving water. So it's an interesting symbolism there as well of the life-giving waters that would flow forth from Jesus.
Right there where God, where Jesus says, why have you forsaken me? Like just angry at God, right?
Interesting, because do we hear in the Gospel of John, my God, why have you forsaken me? No. In the Gospel of John, it's very different. Did we come to those words already in chapter 18, or is that coming up in 19?
Oh, 19.
Chapter 19 is when he dies? Okay. So in chapter 19, fasten your seatbelts, because Jesus is not going to say, my God, why have you abandoned me? I thought they were going to be welcoming you as king, and we'd be turning over the world here. No. In chapter 19, he has a very different response rather than yelling at God. There we go. Did he die in chapter 19, or is that chapter 20?
He died.
He died, of course, he was placed in the tomb. Old age. I'm blaming this one on old age. Christopher, you'll see. Sarah, you'll see when you get to my age. So, Jesus expired saying what? It is finished. His last words, it is finished. He is in control. In the Gospel of John, I love the Gospel of John because it's the super Jesus, where he's in control until the final end. He decides, okay, it is finished. And he dies. He hands over his spirit, it says.
That's where the statue of Christ is where the merciful Father, where it's spilling out blue, red,
Excellent
and
insight.
white. Right?
Divine Mercy
And Divine
Sunday
Mercy.
then was an apparition that was had by a nun where there are these light beams that we see coming out of Jesus' heart. Have we seen that image before? Where it's sort of like this red light and this blue light coming out of his heart. What do those symbolize? They symbolize the blood and the water, which according to the Gospel of John, flowed from his side. How it is that the Gospels are different from one another, John gives us that story of water and blood flowing from Jesus' side. Totally makes sense if the Bible is a book of theology, because then life-giving waters came out of that event. If it's a book of history, then the doctors and nurses in the room have to scratch their heads and figure out, well, where did the water come from? Did he drink too much that day?
We